Welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast, the number one show to bring you all things Club America in English, from tactical analysis
Pelota para la banda izquierda.
to player updates. We've got you covered on all the latest news on Las Águilas. Now, let's start the show. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eagle Eye Podcast. Today, we're going to be recapping Club America's just very poor and just very draining past performances. Not a lot of optimism coming out of my mouth, and it's because I think it's just it's been that kind of week, and it's been that kind of season, to be honest. And we'll get into the nitty gritty of it all. But yeah, just happy to be on the podcast again, be able to talk all things Club America. And today, I'm not doing it by myself. I am joined today by my always co-host. It is Mr. Chris Rivera. Chris, how we doing, my friend?
Good. Listening to my dad complain from a distance because he's a Dodgers fan, and if you follow us on here enough, you know that I'm an Angels fan. So I'm kind of,
It's music to your ears.
and my dad right now, listening to him suffer. So right now I'm doing good. I don't know. I don't know if later on it's gonna be bad, but right now I'm doing good.
All right. Well, we'll see how things turn up for the World Series in that sense. But yeah, glad to have you on, Chris. Look, we spoke earlier before hopping on the podcast. We knew that today was going to be one of those episodes. It's going to be a lot to talk about, a lot of ranting most likely, and really a lot of stuff that maybe we got to get off our chest in regards to this America side. So I mean, we might as well just start from when we left off in the last podcast. Whenever we had Kari on, we spoke and previewed the game.
Can we start before that? Because I wasn't here last time, and I think we should start with the whole Campeones Cup and all that. It's not even gonna take that long because I think we're gonna
Oh yeah,
somewhat
no, that's good
agree,
because
somewhat disagree.
we didn't get to hear your input in regards to Campeones Cup. I guess just throw me your 2 cents in regards to that.
Uh, Look, I know we had the whole debate whether it was official, whether it's not international, this and that. Look, at the end of the day, if it counts, right? There's just too much iffiness in reality. Like I don't, I don't like cups like that when it's meant to promote something, you know. And to me, Leagues Cup, Campeones Cup just feel more of a trampoline for MLS than for us, right? Mind you, I'm not looking at it from a league's perspective because if it was any other team playing, I don't necessarily care, right? But when they kind of use our name, kind of use something just to pretty much hype them up, and they are just built in a certain way. I just don't like it. But in the day, I mean, they counted it as an official cup, right? It's not an international cup like I wanted it to be, but in the day, I'm as happy as I was with the Super Copa MX, right? So in the day, that's how I feel now. Getting into the whole crisis thing, right? I don't like the idea of throwing games, and I put quotation on throwing games, right? Because I don't necessarily think Gardinez going into these games saying, you know what, we lose, right? I think they're looking at it as the same way we did it with the Clásico. We're gonna set up to survive. You know, we get a goal. We're gonna make sure we win it off that goal and nothing more, right? In those games against Necaxa and against Pumas, that's exactly how it felt, you know. And we'll get into the León game right now and try to compare it with those two games, but ultimately it feels like you're 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 prioritizing certain things, and with the way the season's going, I don't know if you should have prioritized that cup over the Pumas game, right, or the league, and ultimately, right. I know Baños came out and said differently, and I'm sure a lot of people disagree with what I'm saying, but I do think ultimately, right, Ivan, you said it perfectly last week, right? When you were on with talking about Leon. What was the first thing you said? If we lose it, they're clowning on us because we lost it. We win it, they're talking about how it's a plastic cup, you know?
Yeah.
I think the way to shut up all of that is always winning league, right? Even if there's always this robo, this and that, cool, you know? But it can't doubt those stars that we end up getting, right? Even though we don't put them on the badge, you can't question them. So for me, that's where I was very iffy on throwing the game against Necaxa, or not throw again quotations because we got to tie in that game and in the Pumas game, the way Pumas was playing, it was for us to win, and you kind of put out a team to say, you know what, we're gonna hold on to the result, get a point, and So for me, bittersweet. Like I said, I'm happy we won the cup. But I said it too. The game against Pumas to me was just a little bit more important. And I just felt like, I mean, you, and Christian got into this debate on the formations, how they're playing, this and that. When you're having injuries, you're gonna have to sacrifice something, right? And you sacrifice your style of play to get these results, and it's just from here on out, you have to be yourself. You can't be what you were trying to be, right? You have to be yourself, and you have to dominate the rest of the season. So that's my 2 cents on the whole last week thing.
I mean, I see where you're coming from in regards to that. And I understand the quotations regarding, throwing matches. Obviously, the game leading up to Campeones Cup was an Necaxa game, and we felt like, obviously a couple players got arrested, not arrested, but got
Arrested.
rested. uh, they got put on the bench, and they were kind of put on standby just in case the game needed them, and of course, eventually they did end up needing them. Um, but I felt that was a smart play from Harinet, knowing that Campeones Cup was kind of always going to be the objective, and coming into this game, into this matchup, you heard Harine speak highly about wanting to win this competition, but not just that. Let's go back a couple months back whenever we were talking about Campeones Cup, whenever we were talking Leagues Cup. It was always the narrative that America wanted to kind of portray, that hey, we understand that we're involved with all these competitions. We understand that we are America, and there's a standard that we have set for ourselves, especially this past year. So, of course, our objective is to win everything and anything that comes our way. So, obviously, Campeones Cup was always going to be one of those games where the team was going to want to progress, and the team was going to want to win that. And I think objectively, that was kind of on the whiteboard at the beginning of the season. Like, okay, the top 3 trophies for the calendar year from 2024 to 2025. I think Campeones Cup was on there. I don't think it's the highest on the list. And obviously the league's there too, but I do think that the biggest trophy that America wants to win this calendar year is Champions Cup. I think that is the true highly objective, right? It's not necessarily the Tricampeonato, of course, that they're still going to be fighting for it. It's not necessarily winning the league or anything else, and I think the priority is Champions Cup. But again, that's a conversation for next year, because that's a competition that you're not going to play until next year. It's unfortunate, the situation that we find ourselves in, right? I mean, I have not seen this America be so hospitalized by injuries since 2020 with Gibran, not Gibran, sorry, Gibber.
Yeah, it's around there because when Nico was still on the team, Castillo.
Yeah.
So
So it seemed like back then everyone was made out of glass, and now this one, it's a wave, and it's ridiculous. But yeah, obviously we came in knowing that the important game was going to be Columbus, and then afterwards we were going to go up against Pumas in a very much needed matchup where we needed 3 points. I think we all disagreed in how America came out and played that game. We all had kind of different opinions on the formation if it worked, if it didn't, whatever. But at the end of the day, I think we all left very disappointed that America did not put on a good performance in a Clásico, regardless of what your formation is. Um, and yeah, and then we move on into this Leon game, and where we're expecting better things, better outcomes. Uh, and again, it just America falls flat. You know, they again have to settle for a draw, which is unfortunate because that's 3 weeks in a row now that you're settling for a draw. You settle for a draw against Necaxa. Against Pumas, the best you were going to be able to settle for was a draw since you conceded. And then obviously against Leon, after Rodrigo Aguirre scores that goal, I don't see any avenue for America again. I know they were pushing forward, but you just felt like it was just going to stay at that. It was going to stay at the 1-1 situation, which, you know, was the final outcome. So yeah, it is frustrating times right now for all Americanistas. But yeah, like I said, I kind of understand where you're coming from in regards to the criticism behind, you know, throwing, in quotation mark, throwing these games when we've dug ourselves so deep a hole in the league that right now we're scraping for points. And coming from a bicampeonato, that's really embarrassing.
And some people argued that we upgraded in position. I know you weren't one of those
No,
people, right? You
no,
were very
100%.
critical with
This
saying
team
we
has definitely
downgraded.
downgraded.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, right? You look at what we're saying about the Borja signing.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of two Fuentes and Chava. You bring in Borja, who's better than he looks worse than them, right?
Yeah.
Aguirre was a plus. Chiquito Sanchez a D. I think there's moments, right? But it's not a consistent moments. Alan Cervantes has looked horrible. I think it's safe to say that, right? He has
Yep.
looked really, really bad. And me and Christian said it before the game. Who was it against? Where did he start? He started against Pumas, right? Where he said, "Look, we're very critical of Jonathan Dos Santos, right? We're very critical of his age. He might be retiring soon. We don't know, right? We don't know what his situation is. But if Alan Cervantes looks decent, or at least as a starter, right? We don't have to worry necessarily because he's not an older player. He's a younger player. No, he goes out there and looks really bad, right? There was a stat where he only passed the ball forward 3 times. Like, come on, bro. Like I understand that you come from Santos, where it's not Santos like has they're in a real crisis, right? In Santos, where they're just trying to survive week in week out. For us, it's not like that. So when you see a player like that and his stats are, and we could sit here and analyze everything. Maybe it is the forwards. You know, it could be his wingers. It could be just there's nothing there. It could be, but I mean, you would see a consistent from both midfielders if that was the case, and it isn't. So an awful thing. Jefecito, same thing. I don't even know what he's doing with the team, honestly. And then I'm
Yeah.
trying Davila. You're not even playing him where he's supposed to come in and play. And I get it, Brian's doing good, right? It's not like he's coming in and walking into the starting 11. But I mean, you're putting him on the right side where well, I'm sure every Americanista that is listening or not listening will sit here and say, we didn't bring you for that right side. We have Sendejas and we have Javairo. If Sendejas not doing good, Javairo was our best player before League Cup.
Yeah.
Why is he not there? There's a lot to highlight. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, and like I said, debatable whether we upgraded on things, but I think a lot of people would argue that they did. I know, like I said, you were consistent saying no. Quinones. We were losing out goals with him. I didn't rate him that high, but reality is we're missing out goals with him. And some people would argue, well, you bring in a creative player, you're not even using him. So it's a lot of things, And to me, the only optimistic thing I could say is at least there's a break this week, right?
Yeah.
There's a break. There's
Yeah.
a refresh.
There's a break for the team, for the club to kind of, get some players back. And honestly, it's a break for the fans. It's it's
Yeah.
gotten to the point where it's just gotten hard to watch. And I know a lot of people are gonna come in and be like, "Well, you can't be bad. You can't be a bandwagon fan. You can't just kind of be there for the highs and kind of not want to be there for the lows." And look, I get it. I was present every weekend watching that America side in 2008, where we got
Oh, so was I.
demolished by teams that we should have been
So was I,
winning.
bro.
Yeah. So I mean,
I remember those
it's
arguments with my mom. I always say this story. My mom at that time went through like a very religious phase, and she wanted to go to church, and I wanted to go and watch it because I always say I can't see an America game at a Sunday because
yeah.
it traumatized me, and it was during that time, and I watched every single game, the swine flu season and everything to see the.
Hmm.
You know what? People complain because there's not there's not people in the stadiums nowadays. During the swine flu season, it was empty, man. Like it was like COVID before COVID. It was
Yeah, it was
completely
bad.
empty, and America was awful. America. It was so bad, and there's a lot of narratives that you see on Twitter that say, "Oh, we need to play with nothing but youngsters," and then I'm just like, "Bro, we already went through that. I don't want to live through it
We've
again."
gone, yeah, we've gone down that avenue. It did not pan out. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, it's a good thing that there's a break, and I think both sides need it, and hopefully we can recover a couple players. Because it's ridiculous the amount of injuries that we continue to have. But let's talk quickly and briefly about this Leon matchup, right? And then maybe we'll dive deep a little bit into why America has had the season that they've had and why they are in the position that they are right now, 10th place in the league. But coming into this game, right, we knew that the importance of winning this game was just crucial. We needed the 3 points. We needed to scale the table. And honestly, we needed to get a rhythm going, right? We couldn't go into the international break on another loss because it was gonna be detrimental to the whole squad. And so yeah, it was an important matchup. A lot of people were curious as to whether or not Jardine was going to continue experimenting with this back five. I'm just going to throw a quick question at you, Chris. Did you like the back five at any point? Did you think, okay, this could work? And as it played out against the likes of Columbus, against the likes of Pumas, against the likes of Chivas, against the likes of all these teams that we've faced with this back five, at any point did it convince you and think, okay, this could be an alternative to what we usually play?
no, I never liked it, but I understood it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was very defensive of of what we were seeing. Was
Yeah.
I ever like, oh, we need to play like this? So, no, but I understood when there's injuries, there the calendars against us. There's a lot of things that you have to do, right? And I highlighted players on why, right? The Pumas game, Dago has a bad game, right? A very he gets burnt in that goal, and Chicote's playing center back, but you have to have him there because Borja is always up, and that's what my biggest critique is just. Well, you have to play him because when you play with the four and he's all the way up, his game doesn't change whether you change the formation. He's
Yeah.
almost never down there, right? You start to see Fidalgo drop down a lot, and that's another reason. Like, right, we're gonna highlight a lot of things on what's wrong with this America. The ball handler hasn't been Fidalgo this season. I mean, it has to do a lot because of Borja, because he has to drop down, and whenever he has the ball, he has to build with someone and dribble up, right? Mind you, there has been ugly misses from Fidalgo where we're gonna probably get into a lot throughout his time here, right? Since he's been here, but nonetheless, it's just been like the five to me. I said, okay, I understand it, and and mind you, the Pumas game, you probably win it if it's not for a defensive, or not win it, but you'd probably tie it 0-0 if it wasn't for that defensive mistake, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Columbus game, I guess there is where you kind of start to like the formation, but that's more because Columbus was playing with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Columbus wasn't trying to counter you. They were basically playing with you, and you're playing with them, and that just created a better dynamic for each side, right? But like I said, you look at the Cruz Azul game, and what happens? Borja gets burnt by Luis Romo, and they end up scoring on us, and we get scored four. It has a lot to do with the players and what you're lining up. That's why for me, I've been very critical on that Borja signing, and that to me has been of the bigger sabotage that one of us we want to talk about. Mind you, Chicote has had ugly mistakes that have led to goals, right? But at the same time, it's like he's playing center back. He's not necessarily playing as a left back. And mind you, again, we could even argue that they're not even playing with a five. They're playing with three center backs while the wingbacks are way ahead, right? Because there's no wingers; they're basically are the wingers, you know.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot to really talk about. But to answer your question, no, I never liked it. I never got convinced of it, but I understood, right? I understood you're gonna hold the zero and whatever opportunity, whether it's a set piece or a counter, that's how we're gonna score. A lot of teams play like that against us, right? And that's usually a very rat way to play. But I think you kind of have to because of the injuries.
Yeah, look, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, no, I don't understand why Jardine is playing that formation. I do understand it. Um, I just never really quite got some of the players that he put in certain positions, like Chicote at center back. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you give Miguel Vasquez the chance. I mean, at the time we didn't think that he was capable. Maybe this Leon game gives him a little bit more of credibility. Um, Again, though, still just a lot of questions. We lose a lot going forward. We don't really have an outlet going forward, and in regards to how we like to play out from pressure. Excuse me. Um, yeah, not a big fan of the back five either. But it was a good thing that we saw the starting 11 and we saw, okay, cool, we're going back to the back four. It looks like we're working. We're gonna do things right. Obviously the biggest thing was that Brian Rodriguez gets announced injured hours before kickoff, and so that means he's not gonna be featured in this game. Victor Davila eventually does end up playing in that left winger role that we originally thought he was gonna be playing whenever he did come to America. So it looked like this America side was slowly gonna start looking like the old America, at least on paper. And I want to say that they started off the game pretty decent, right? I mean, we had a very good opportunity with Diego Valdez in the first opening 10 minutes of the match. But after that, I don't know. Talk to me, Chris. What do you think went wrong from that, promising start to then, closing out the first half and getting scored on?
Honestly, man, the way I saw the game, they just look fatigued, man. I mean, you look at the goal, right? Let's look at the goal. A lot of people are highlighting Chicote not being able to, how do you let someone beat you from behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you needed to be more aware of who was behind you, what you're doing. So I get all that. But then you look at Guardado and how alone he was. It's just like I said. It felt like some players were fatigued. There was after the goal that we scored, it did feel like push is going to be there. There was a moment in the second half where we were kind not necessarily like aggressive, but we were there, right? And you just felt like there's these players just didn't have, and you kind of felt it in the Pumas game too. They just felt like they didn't have the energy, right? They felt tired. They felt, or at least that's how I felt, watching them. And and it's just one of those things, is it the schedule? Is it the fatigue? Is it, well, what is it, right? Because I could tell you, like, formation wise, well, you put out the best you could probably do, right? I mean, is
Yeah.
there any complaints from anybody, right? Even Kevin Alvarez coming back, and he looks really good. He looked good offensively, defensively. Miguel Vasquez looked like, someone on here said it like, oh, we should see him over Araujo, and I kind of pushed it back because of his match against Atletico Nacional. But he comes out and makes an argument for himself, right?
Yeah.
So what exactly could it be? I know a lot of people blaming Henry Martin, but I don't even think it's that, because I don't even think he's out there missing many shots to sit here and blame it on him, right? Because if he was missing open shots or whatever, like not getting all these opportunities, not. I will say, and maybe this is a discussion that we should have, but I think Diego Valdez might start to see the bench. I think it's time to play with someone else at the 10, because I think he doesn't have the creativity nor the ball control that he once had. I don't know if his injury really did affect him or not, but that's where I come also, come out of this game with, it's not having that impact.
Yeah, I think that is not just a one single factor. I think it's a lot of things kind of coming together and creating, like, quote unquote, this perfect storm of negativity for America, and it's affecting the way that this team is playing on the pitch. I mean, it's just it's frustrating, right? Because you know that these players have a capability, yet they're not playing to their standards, and so that's frustrating. And you mentioned fatigue, right? And you mentioned about the fact, but the schedule, how conflicting is it? I'll tell you this much: it's not as bad as when we had Concacaf Champions Cup last year, and when the team literally looked drained in the final against Cruz Azul. But at that point, these still were looking much better than you are right now. And look, I'm telling you this right now: if they are complaining about fatigue, about the schedule, then they're not gonna like the closing end of the league, because it's doble jornada pretty much 2 to 3 weeks straight, right? We come back, on the 19th, I believe. Yeah, we come back on the 19th. Then mid game match. Then we play on the weekend another mid game match. No, excuse me, not another mid game
Well,
match. We have another.
well, let me correct what I mean by scheduling. It's not necessarily the schedule. It's the consistency of not getting that rest, right? Since the 14th. That's more of what I'm talking about. And hey, brother, and you know me, bro. I complain about all these things. Friendlies, national team call-ups. You know, nothing pisses me off more when I see Henry Martin getting called up and he's out there playing both games, right? A lot of people will sit here and say, "Oh, Televisa does this and that." Brother, like that's more sabotage to us than you think. Like
Yeah,
trust me, like you know, Israel Reyes playing all these games, and it's not just Mexico. The only reason I highlight Mexico is because it's not World Cup qualifiers like other countries, right? Like if they're calling Valdez or they're calling Richard or they're calling Brian Rodriguez and they're playing World Cup qualifiers, all right, I understand you guys are trying to qualify to a World Cup. It means something. But when you're just trying to market these pointless games and right, and it's like you're calling them up midweek, and it's just all these things and it's not even just the national team, Leagues Cup again. Like I'm not a fan of the format. I'm not a fan of pausing the league. Not a fan of the fields that they play in. Just a lot of things. And then America too. Like I said, we go and play these Tor Aguilas, and it's like, what happened last time we played Cruz Azul? Sendejas injured, Fidalgo injured. Like, why are we playing them? Right? Why are we playing them? Like everyone is here saying, "Oh, academy players," and we talked about this a little bit. We'll probably get into it right now on Jardinez's stance with all that. But to me, it's just like the scheduling it's just inconsistent. It's too many games, but it's not just too many games. There's no rotations in any of this, right? There's
yeah.
no rotations. Like, mind you, league games, right? But there, like, why are we having rotations for league games? Like, why? Why? Why are we doing that? Because you have all these other stuff, all this BS behind us that whether it's club or not club is just destroying the team, and then that's my biggest issue, right? That's why I highlight schedule. It's not necessarily like the current schedule, but it's just from last year to now, right? We like what was the point of that Barcelona game, bro? You know what I mean? And then to find out it's to make them a favor, because they needed money. It's
Yeah.
just very confusing. It's very confusing. It's like, bro, give them their vacation, play these academy players, right? Like if you guys are so desperate in playing these play them. We get destroyed, so who cares, right? They're academy players. They're the ones that are going to use this experience for good or for bad. But when you start using all these starters, and it's just like, man, what you could just tell when it's fatigue and in all these injuries too. We're talking about Giebert too, right? Well, that one they would get injured at training. These players aren't getting injured at training. They're getting injured because of the effects of the game. And so that's what I mean by schedule.
No, yeah, I get what you're coming from in that sense. So I do feel like obviously that this team has not gotten any proper rest because the league starts so quickly. You had Campeones Cup, not Campeones Cup, excuse me. You had the
Leagues Cup.
Super Copa MX stuff, and then
Oh yeah.
you get jumped in right away, and yeah, it is a lot that these players kind of have to endure, and it's unfortunate. So I mean, we'll see. Obviously, we did say that there's a week break, but obviously it's not necessarily a break because you have this friendly against Chivas in Houston, right? And so we'll see what happens. Obviously, we're gonna see a couple starters. Hopefully, they don't get any more than 45 minutes, um, and throw in the rest of the kids. It's obviously you want to appease the fans as much as you can, but I think at this point of the season, a lot of the fans would understand that. Hey, I would much rather see Fidalgo get benched the entirety of the game than to risk him, picking up an injury or something in this pointless clásico. So we'll see what happens. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. But that game is coming up this weekend as well. So it's not like it's a full break for this America side. There's still traveling to be done. And yeah, it's like you mentioned, right? These pointless friendlies that kind of, they don't seem so pointless to the American fans, that are here in the States that get to go watch America play. But in the grand scheme of it doesn't help the season in the long run. So yeah, it's unfortunate. And kind of just to wrap up this Leon game, so we kind of don't linger on too much to this one. Obviously the response from America was that we need to score. Aguirre comes in, does that, and I think very well in regards to America responding, knowing that they needed to get something out of this game. But you felt like once they scored, they kind of took that deep breath and were like, okay, we can manage with this, and yeah, that's what happened. We took away a draw, and it didn't seem like much at first, Chris, but that point was very valuable to take us all the way from 12th to 10th, and lucky America, we're in a playing position.
You know what kind of does piss me off though? For like several weeks, all we need is a win, and we're like way clear from
Yeah,
10, 12, whatever.
yeah,
We'll get into like top five, like that's how big a win it is, and we're not getting it. And like I said, I understand, like we're trying to get a result. A 1-1 doesn't annoy me, but at the
yeah,
same time, you kind of look at it from a table standpoint, you're just like, we're just right there, and we could get it with right 2 wins, and we're probably set for the rest of the season, maybe. Like
yeah. If some results go our way, obviously.
obviously not from our standards, right? Because obviously we're used to being in first place, but like you're okay with just like okay, we're gonna be in the year, but it's just like you're still tying, you're losing, and it's just like we're better than this, right? And like I said, hopefully this rest becomes really a rest, kind of refresh, even from a coaching standpoint. Hopefully Jardine watches the tape and says, "All right, I'm overthinking this. I'm doing this. This guy isn't like doing good. Like like whatever they need to do." But they needed to start yesterday, right? They needed to
Yeah,
start right after the Leon game. They had to start that mindset, not because I think you and I have been saying like, okay, this is the week, and
yeah,
we're just teasing that borderline of not making play-ins, and it's like, okay, like all you need is that one win, and you're basically set. And we thought we had it with Chivas and Atlas, but like I said, quote unquote throw away those 2 games against Necaxa and Pumas, and I just felt that set us back even. It just set us back. It's not even farther. It just set us back.
I agree. I 100% agree. It's a setback, and again, America continues to try to dig themselves out of a hole that they've dug themselves from the beginning of the season. And at that stage, I was telling you guys, right, the importance of winning those games and the rivals that we had in front of us, and how important it was to get these points, and we didn't, and now we're paying the consequences of it. Obviously, there's a lot of external factors that go along with that, but I think that those poor performances at the beginning of the season obviously are coming back to haunt us. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but hey, America gets that point, and now we are officially in 10th place in a play-in spot, and it's just honestly, Chris, it's just it seems very humiliating from an Americanista perspective. Like if if someone was in a coma and they just woke up and they've been in a coma for the past 25 years, right? And you were to tell them, and they watched this America side, they watched this Leon game versus America, and you tell them that America has just won 5 trophies in 1 year, are reigning back-to-back champions. That guy would think that you're just talking out of your rear end. They would be like, "No, what are you talking about? That is not a championship winning team." Look at the table and
What
be
year
like,
was 25 years ago?
"Huh?"
What year was it? What year was 25 years ago? That was
1999.
yeah. Yep. they, they went through. They didn't win too much in the 90s, but they
No,
saw
they
some
didn't.
dynamic teams that didn't. They saw some dynamic teams that didn't win anything.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, can you imagine trying to sell that story and just be like, yeah, no, like this is the reigning champions, like this is, without having to show obviously video proof or anything. But I don't think anyone would buy you that story, Like America is in complete campeonitis, and I don't necessarily think it's campeonitis, right? It's the fact that you, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for America this year, and I guess it's just one of those things where it's been an uphill battle for the reigning champions. And honestly, I don't know if this season ends well for America. I don't know if the Apertura has a tricampeonato for us, right? Obviously, that's the goal. And then I'm not saying that this team is incapable of doing it, right? I mean, you get a couple wins under your belt, you get a couple players back, and maybe start picking up some form. Hopefully, yeah, you can make it. But at the time being, right now, I don't know.
so what would convince you? That's my question to everyone, right? Because for me, the way I view this team is all that matters is how you get. Like, at some point in before the season ends, you have to get hot,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to, once you get hot, it doesn't matter where you place on the table. You're your favorite, right? You're a favorite because this last year isn't like coincidence, right? You don't win 5 championships in a year and off of coincidence, right? Even the Campeones Cup, as much as I have criticized it, it's not because I'm criticizing the idea of it. I'm criticizing the format of it, right? You win it because you became champion. That's the
Yeah,
only way you get into this tournament,
yeah,
this game, right? So it's not a coincidence that you win 5, right? No matter what doubters or haters want to say, there's no coincidence. No one in there. If Tigres does this, we're talking about best team of the época. We're glazing Gignac. We're doing all these things, right? But because it's America, they're gonna try to downplay it. But at the same time, it's not a coincidence. So again, my question to everyone, even the people listening: what does America have to do in these last games of the season to convince you that that we're just favorites? We could win this 3 in a row.
Simple. Win all our home games, get results in our away games, and in the last game of the season, beat Toluca at their home stadium by 2 goals or more. That would
The last
100%
part is kind
convince
of
me.
iffy.
Yeah. But
The
that
last
would
part is very
convince me.
iffy.
That would 100% convince me, and I would come on to the podcast 100% confident that America can win the tricampeonato. Is
All
that
right,
far
now,
fetched?
now let's look.
Maybe. I don't know.
So let's look at the rest of the games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Santos at home, which Santos
Which
doesn't matter if they do bad. Santos doesn't matter if they're doing bad because we've seen it.
time and time
They
again. Yeah,
yep. Cholos and Tijuana,
that's gonna be a tough match.
Osorio could be a headache in
Mm-hmm.
Tijuana. Monterrey at home again,
It's Monterrey.
very complicated.
Yep.
Mazatlan America and Mazatlan, we should win that one. Very comfortable, even if it's away, right?
Well,
We should. I don't
it's
think
Mazatlan away. That's fair.
they don't have a team that. Yeah, but it's gonna be a home game. They're very Americanistas over there. America Pachuca
It's Pachuca.
headache, right? A headache, and they're having the same type of season as us, right? They're more of a one season wonder than people are trying to paint us, right?
Yeah.
Because Everyone said, "Oh, the formula's playing with nothing but youngsters." Well, look at it now, right? Now they're one of the worst teams in the league. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
stop it. Then Toluca, like you said,
The toughest match at all.
uh, uh, arguably, most likely, right? But at the same time, a team that's gonna play their ass off against us, that could spark anything for us, right? Like Columbus did. I'm sure
Yeah.
everyone watched the Columbus game and they're kind of satisfied with how we were playing, right? Toluca could bring the same thing to the table. So, out of all those games, how many points are you expecting, and how many, or not expecting? How many do you? How many for you? The realistic points and what you expect out of those games. Oh, and
Realistic.
mind you, some of these games are weekdays. Like
Yeah.
Cholos is on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
Mazatlan is on a
Yeah.
Friday,
These mid-match
Pachuca's on
games
a
are not.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These
which could
mid-match
cause
games
us a
aren't.
lot of problems.
Yeah, they're not. That's why I said that the closing of the table is not gonna. I mean, the closing of the season is not gonna be fun because there's gonna be a lot of doble jornada. Honestly, I mean, realistically, what America should get is minimum 12 points, minimum, right?
Oh, and to say they lose
They lose two
two
games,
games.
yeah, right,
Okay.
minimum. Ideally, I'd want like 15 points, right? 15
Yeah.
points would be ideal. Um, Let me see. Is that even doable? 4, that's
Uh,
12,
3,
2, 2,
6,
no,
9,
14.
12.
14. 14 points is ideal. I would be content with 14 points. I mean, the best case scenario, you win every single match, which I know is a tough ask, especially in the conditions that we're in. And you look at the rivals, they're not pushovers either. So it's a tough way to close the season. So minimum 12 points. And if we're doing the math, 12 points would get us into 26 points in a 26-point range, right? You would think that's good enough to finish maybe fifth, maybe sixth, depending on how other results go. But that's a direct ticket into the playoffs. So, I mean, it's gonna be a long stretch. It's gonna be a long couple of weeks. Um, a lot of headaches along the way, but I mean, if there was ever a set of matches to kind of shape and mold you into a championship winning side, it would be these games. And if you catch
One thing
fire,
I'll say though,
mm-hmm,
luckily for us, we don't travel almost at all in those last two games,
no, not at
right?
all.
You go to Mazatlan, Monterrey comes to us. The Tijuana game could be annoying because it's a weekday, right?
Yeah,
But overall, like we can't do all the math because there's probably could be some games where we're probably looking at it like, oh, that's a loss, and we end up winning, or a game that we're looking at it on paper and saying that's an easy matchup, and
and it turns out that to be.
we know how those games are, right?
No.
Yeah. So ideally, we win out, but like I said, everything has to do with a lot of things. First, we have to come back healthy. Once we
Yeah,
come back
and
healthy,
that's the thing, right? Is this America side has been plagued with so many injuries that you would think, the big question is going to be what if America didn't have all these injuries? What if our center back partnership stayed the same? What if Cáceres wasn't out for so long? Sure, we lose Igor, but maybe Cáceres stays and we look like a much sharper side because of it, right? I think you mentioned, right, the fact that Fidalgo has to drop a lot more because of space being left by the left back. I don't think he does that much if Cáceres is there because Cáceres is just that good of a defender that he can cover you that much space. He's a very fast, very quick, very agile defender. So obviously, a lot less manpower needs to be thrown down there. Um, What if Diego Valdez doesn't get injured as much as he did? How does he look? Chiquito Sanchez has been injured for the past couple of weeks, right? What does he look like? He was starting to pick up form with America.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? There's a lot of what ifs that are going to be circling around this side. And the reality is that we're not going to have our answers until next year when everybody hopefully comes back injury free. We get some proper rest. We get a proper, games under these guys' belts. And we finally start looking like the America side that we all know that this team is capable of being. But yeah, it's going to be important to get a lot of these players back. You know, Brian, how long is he going to be out?
One thing I will highlight though, and no one's really talking about it, is the youngster rule.
Mm-hmm.
There's some teams that are ahead of us that are not covering it at all. They have
Cruz
like
Azul?
100 minutes, and you need a Cruz Azul, Tigres. They're gonna end up losing 3 points. Would that be enough for us to go, past them?
Probably
Maybe
not.
it really depends on us, but it really depends on us to start winning these games.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, I mean,
Tigres is a realistic one.
if you win every single game that is left on this board, then maybe, yeah, I could see a possibility in the stars. But
Wait, hold on. Let me look. Where do I find that youngster minutes thing? In their page, or
it's on the league.
because we're in the bottom. We're in the bottom, but I'm not worried
No,
about
no, no.
us not
We're in the
hitting that.
middle. We're in the middle. We've surpassed, I think, 600 minutes
No, we're in the
already.
bottom. On this one, we're not in the bottom, but we're in the bottom half of.
Well,
We're
how
in the
many
top of
minutes
the.
does it show?
We're lower middle, 638.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right.
And mind you, Atlas is behind us, Querétaro is behind us, Toluca is behind us, Tigres is behind us. So Toluca, another one. Toluca, Tigres are the lowest ones, right? Let's say they don't make it. They lose out 3 points. That's huge for us. Because I do think America's going to hit it because Dago has been playing very consistent. And so has Miguel. I think Miguel Ramirez made a case like, hey, like if
Yeah,
Araujo is
and you
here
can see him
to
playing
cause you
against
guys
Santos, right?
problems, yeah, like and I liked how he played. Mind you, it's not like he stood out amazing either, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, we don't need him to be a superstar, right? Day one, we need him to just be solid. Don't be
Yeah,
one of
just go in there,
those
do
youngsters
your
that come
job.
in. Don't be Emilio Lara, for example, right? Emilio
Exactly.
Lara, I always said he had the upside, but he costs us games. Eventually you got to get rid of him because he's costing us games. So as, as long as he's solid, it's cool. He could be a Puma Pimentel. I always thought
Hopefully a
Puma
better
Pimentel was
Puma
solid, but he
Pimentel.
wasn't like
Yeah.
Ventura Alvarado or something. I don't know.
Yeah, another one that was, in his time had some solid moments. But yeah, no, I agree. Look, this youngster thing is gonna come back to bite a lot of teams. Specifically, I think the lowest one is Cruz Azul, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and it's funny because last year they bragged about how many youngsters they played, and their whole bench
Yeah.
was nothing but youngsters. And
But
it's
now you
like,
look at it and it's a tricky situation. I mean, even if they field a bunch of youngsters for the next 4 games, right? Will they cover it? Maybe, but then they run the risk of losing those games. So you're still putting in jeopardy 3 points, regardless, right? At that stage. Um. So yeah, it's interesting, but we'll see. We'll see. And look, I think America has done all right so far. We have how many games left in the season? 6, right? 6 games left in the season.
7, I think.
No,
Hold on,
because
let me.
we already did the jornada once.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're right, 6. Yeah,
Yeah, so there's
6.
6 games left in the season. You know, God, I can't do math. What's 9 times 6? 90. Well, 9 times 6 is 54. All right. Add a 0. That's 540 minutes. Boom. We clear it. That's playing one youngster per 90. Right?
And it's different by age too. It's
Yeah.
different by age. So like that 16-year-old we were using early on, like we could just plug them in, and it covers like a whole bunch. So,
Yeah. So
but obviously,
again,
though, that's not even important for us right now. Like the most
yeah,
important thing is
yeah,
being in the
yeah. We
Liga.
need to
That's
get points.
you know.
Yeah. But I think it's doable. I think America has gotten to the stage of the season where okay, we surpassed more than half of the minutes required. So from here on out, you can kind of take it steady. Yeah, you're not gonna have to throw in youngsters just to throw in youngsters. You can kind of uh edge them along the way. So that's the good part. Obviously, the bad part is we're kind of relying on these youngsters because we have no other options. You know, the good thing is we obviously are gonna get back players the likes of um Cáceres should be back. Israel Reyes played a couple minutes, so he looks like he's gonna be getting coming back. Again, I don't know how long his Brian injury is gonna be. Hopefully, it's like he's back in like about
Who was
2 weeks. Huh?
It was muscle, right?
Yeah, it was a
Muscle, right?
muscle injury. That's what I'm saying. I'm hoping he's
He's
back in
back.
2 weeks.
He probably is back by the Santos game. Well, not. I mean,
And
muscle
we'll
is such
see.
a weird injury, but
Yeah,
it's all fatigue. That's really what it is. You know that's the
yeah.
reason why I highlight it. Is like
And Henry
obviously
got
the
injured
mindset is there's
too,
no yeah Henry like
so he got dropped from the national team, which is a blessing in disguise. Because he just needs to rest. We know how fragile he's been lately. Yeah, look, I mean, we just need these players to get some rest. We need them to get some, um, I don't know, some electrolytes, something to get them back into shape. And hopefully things start panning out for America. Hopefully things start gelling together. Because I honestly don't know where else we would be at if we're just again starting just scraping the bottom of the barrel with what we got. And I know it has to be frustrating for Jardinet too and the coaching staff to be like, hey, we got another guy who went down. Like, it's honestly, man, unheard of at this point. I can't
and
remember the
and
last time.
I do wonder what his approach would be in the transfer window because you would assume like he's probably gonna ask like hey like one bring me youngsters that could cover this role because our academy is bad, right? Chris
Yeah,
Ramirez brought it up earlier about Raul Herrera. Like, he's bad. There's no one really out there.
yeah,
Bring me youngsters that cover this rule, that I could use as a rotation that are good enough because you brought me Cervantes, you got me Jefecito, and none of them cover this rule, and there's probably better options out there. So
yeah,
you
and
gotta you
and
gotta cover it. You gotta
the
you gotta
market.
do something.
Yeah, the market's gonna be very tricky, right? And Chris Ramirez saying, thinking that we're gonna need to sign another five next season. Jonah's been on a real dip this season, something we've covered about. Um, he said, or put Dago in the spot since that's his original position,
Israel Reyes, he
or
could play
Israel
it too.
Reyes too. He could play
He's
there.
normal. A lot of people think he's a center back, but he's not. He
More of a
played
better,
in
yeah,
San in Puebla as a third center back, which it was a third center back. It wasn't like he was covering. It was more like he was going forward.
yeah.
Edson Alvarez is the same thing, right?
He played in a much
They're
deeper center defensive mid role.
center
Yeah,
backs that could play CDM.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would like him.
Yeah, there's going to be options. I think there's going to be a lot of tweaking that needs to be done from a managerial perspective and in the transfer window. I'm sure we're going to see some movement as long as America can shift a couple of these players. But the reality is that we're in a tough situation, and honestly, the only way to get out of it is by us just kind of picking ourselves up by the bootstraps and just pushing on. Really, I mean, the fate of what this season rests is still in our hands. We don't depend on anyone else for results at this point. America, if they can win consistently throughout the season, we can position ourselves in a very good spot in the league. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, Chris, it's probably the worst America side since 2008. And you mentioned the La Volpe's 2016 team. Yeah, it was La Volpe's 2016 team.
17, no?
16 or 17, I can't remember. They all.
There was a
This,
season Chivas was champion. That's the only reason I remember that. Because
oh,
they
okay.
won the league and it was 17.
Yeah, look, we haven't had that bad of an America side since, wow, 8 years ago. 8 years of consistency. Yet still, right now, in the slumps that we are, I don't feel like I did back then. I don't feel like 2008 me. Like I don't feel hopeless of this team. I just feel a lot of just dread of having to continue to play the way that we were playing because we really don't have any other options because all of our good options are injured. So,
Yeah.
but I guess we just gotta find some optimism, and the best way to find it, I guess, would be to win against Santos, and you know, keep pushing after that.
Yeah. I mean, you just gotta push through. You gotta, like you said, no excuses, right? It's tiring to like, no, you're not putting out your best because injuries, right? We're talking
Yeah,
formations, we're talking this and that. I wish we had all the players in the world that could fit into any type of system. The reality is, you got to adapt.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, is there anything you want to add up before we kind of start winding down?
I was gonna bring up the Jardine and no complain about the academy thing, but I think we should talk about that some other time. Honestly, like I think there's too much detail, too much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it
There's
hasn't
too
just
much
been
to
him,
cover with
right?
what he said.
Yeah, it's not just him. I,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are upset about this 1,000 minute rule, and I think rightfully so. The intention is good from the federation of from the league's perspective of wanting to implement this. The delivery maybe just hasn't been executed properly to be like, okay, you know, I'm sure there's a
I
way to
think
find a middle ground.
I think there's a misunderstanding when it comes to formadores and coaching, right?
Yeah,
Jardine isn't a formador. He's not in the academy. He's not, you know, there's a coach underneath the system that's developing these players so they could get ready for the first team. If these youngsters are coming in and they don't know, I always say it, bro. Like people are always saying, let all these players go to Europe, brother. The first thing they say is, I had to really learn how to play the game over here. That tells you everything you need to know, right? If you really like, for those people that care about all that, like, youngsters and all that stuff, you should be begging them to leave when they haven't even debuted, not beg for them to debut and then complain because their value is this and that, right? Like, I think there's a lot of things that people are just very brain dead to. They're just very emotional too. And when Jardine said too, he's like, I shouldn't be focused on playing academy players because, like I told you, Ivan, we brought it up for after the we ended the podcast. I told you, Jardine is in a result in any coach in any league, right? It doesn't matter if you're in Real Madrid or you're in Bolivia or what any team around the world. You are in the result business. You let's say Jardine finds nothing but the greatest superstars that Mexico has ever seen, but he doesn't get the results. Oh, they're sacking him. Well, because that's not his job to find the greatest thing that has ever lived. He's out there in a result business, and that's all that matters. If your academy isn't producing because they're not being developed good, that's simple as that, right? And then you live in a country that Mexico where any youngster that looks slightly good is the greatest player ever, and he should already be playing at the greatest teams in Europe. There's just a lot of stuff that's wrong with all of this, bro. And so I'm on his side. I'm on Toluca's coach's side. If clubs really want these academy players to come out, invest in your academy from a training, from coaching, from Go and hire the best developers from all around the world. Go and bring in the best equipment, bring in whatever, right? That's how you produce them. Not I'll put this rule and you're gonna just put him out there. Oh well, that youngster that you desperately want now he's causing me like he's costing me games, right? So it's like I said, the youngsters not gonna have a career, but then that coach is stacked, and that's the last thing they want. They want to get results, right? So like I said, it's a conversation that we could get very, very into, right? We could even have debates because I know there's a lot of people that just be like, "Oh, well, foreigners are the problem." Brother, England is coming out with players, and their league is nothing but foreigners. Spain, same thing, right? Brazil, go look at Brazil. You know that they're investing big in players. It's way deeper than people think it is. But like I said, it's just are you willing to listen and pay attention because it's not just one country doing all this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of scrutiny behind this whole minutes, this whole rules, all of this. Um, but I think you put it perfectly. At the end of the day, Harine and the rest of these coaches, they're in the business of getting results, and specifically with America, if you don't start getting them, your seat starts getting hot. And it's not to say that if Harine doesn't win the league, or if like America gets knocked out by, even if America doesn't make Liga, that Harine is gonna be sacked. But it does make his job a lot more harder for the upcoming clausura, because there's gonna be a lot of pressure. And if he doesn't deliver, well, guess what? Thank you for the 5 trophies, but the door is that way. And it's as simple as
No
that.
one's bigger than the club. No one's
Never,
bigger than the club, right? I,
ever.
I had a friend kind of seen comments from Americanista say, "Oh, Jardine, fire Jardine, this and that." And he's a Chivista, and the first thing he said, "Oh, how can you do that to a coach?" And my brother, that's yesterday. We're focused about today and tomorrow, right? Like, I may not agree with it because I'm looking at it from a context perspective. But brother, in a club like America, the seat is always hot.
Mm-hmm.
The seat is always hot. If America were to lose a 10-0 game after all these 5 trophies, there's a good chance that he gets fired tomorrow.
Yeah, you're gone. You're gone. Yeah, the coaches have been fired for less. So that's the reality.
Yep.
That's what America lives day in and day out. But um, that's kind of our quick, short and fast 2 cents about the whole situation. Anything else to add on, or should we kind of wrap it up here?
No, that's all. I think we're gonna get into more detail once we come back to cover that Santos game. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, like I
Should be
said,
fun.
knock on wood, no injuries, and it's Santos, right? Santos is gonna be a headache because that's just their nature. That they
Yeah.
if there is more than just fatigue, they're gonna expose it, and that's because Santos has always exposed us when it comes to something.
Always. And I don't know why. It's like I don't know. They just have something on us. And I don't know. It's frustrating for sure. But all right, that should do it for us this week on the podcast. We'll come back next week and we'll talk all things Club America and get you guys ready for that game against Santos Laguna, and what hopefully should be um, a matchup in where America can finally turn the tables and start looking forward and hopefully get some momentum going into Liga. We'll see. We've been talking about that. We've consistently been trying to sell that narrative, and America just hasn't helped us push it, but hopefully next week they do. With that said, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out and then talking all things Club America, man.
Always, brother, always. We're always gonna sit here and talk, whether it's we're celebrating or complaining or exaggerating. We're always gonna be here, brother.
Absolutely. And you know what the most exciting thing about today's podcast is? That today's podcast will most likely be the last podcast we do in the heat.
Oh man, thank God. I was about to complain to you about it too. I'm like, bro, you yapping when I should be. I should probably like not talk so much. And I'm sweating, bro.
Yeah, same. Same, but it's the last one. The weather is cooling down here in Southern California, so we should start getting into hoodie season hopefully next week, and that should mean wonders for us on the podcast.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone in the chat. Christian Ramirez, Club America es mi pasión. To everyone listening out there, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever it is that you may listen to us. Thank you so much for taking the time out. And again, we'll be back next week to talk all things Club America in English. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EagleEye Podcast as we keep you guys up to date minute by minute with everything going on in the world of Las Águilas del América. With that said, you guys have a wonderful night. Take care. And as always, arriba en América. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another production of the Eagle Eye Podcast, the #1 source for all things Club America in English. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Eagle Eye Podcast and get all the latest news and coverage. And subscribe to our podcast wherever it is you may listen.